Bounce on my face. Yeah, it is what it is. Okay, we're testing the Moment Tuner today. This thing is designed to adapt your EF lenses to your camera, RF mount, or Sony E mount, and basically detune them to look like old vintage lenses. The current one we have on right now is the L2, which is supposed to make it look similar to a K35, a Canon K35. Is it going to make it look like a K35? No, but is it going to give you these characteristics that maybe you're looking for? From a vintage lens, and you don't have to deal with the vintage lenses themselves. And you can adjust the intensity of the vintageness, the character. That's what we're doing right now. Wow. Love that for us. Super bonus thing that we're going to talk about immediately is that I'm using the Sigma 18 to 35 as our first test lens because the workhorse lens that you can just make look vintage, that's cool. And you can keep the autofocus. You get all the electronic data and you get to keep the autofocus while getting the vintage characteristics, which I have to say is kind of a game changer. All right, let's make this shot look a little nicer first. Tap to focus. Shooting outside just so you can see some bokeh in the background. You know, point a lens at a tree, you're gonna get some bokeh. Yeah, there's a little bit there, bubble bokeh. I went out this morning at like 8 o'clock and did some tests with it, shot some dew on the ground, and the bokeh was nuts, and I can assure you it does not look like the Sigma 18 to 35's natural bokeh, unless I'm just full of crap, but hopefully I'm not. We're at f1.8 on the lens. I'm at a strength 10 on the tuner, so I'm at the most intense strength that you can get of making it look vintage. Here's a 6 on the tuner. We might as well look at what they look like kind of in giant steps here. It's about halfway, 6, 5. And this is the least amount, which I guess is like a 1 or a 0, depending on how you look at it. But I feel like just using a 10 is going to show you the best online what this is going to do to your lens. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to take the adapter off and just see what the 18 to 35 looks like without the adapter on it at all. Didn't touch the ND at all. Exposure looks almost identical. Yeah, for sure. And this is without any tuner at all. This is just the regular 18 to 35. Hopefully we're getting more contrast now, more sharpness now, different bokeh now. Otherwise, what's the point of the tuner if it's not going to detune all that stuff when you do put it on? Okay, let's see the Super Boltar kind of tuner, which is the L1. I haven't put it on yet. I have no idea what it looks like. I was more keen on the K35 one because I actually have some FD lenses that we're going to throw on too that should get close to the K35 look. Obviously, they're not exactly the same, but if let's throw some actual vintage lenses on there to compare. Phone got too hot and the app shut down. Of course. Wow. Okay, the Boltar is mushy. Okay. All right. This is out of 10 on the Super Boltar with the Sigma 18 to 35. I'm just looking at the monitor here and it looks like a mess. Maybe we should turn this one down. Wow, it is soft as heck. Dreamy. Very dreamy. Let's turn this one down. So here's a 6. 6 should, in theory, tune it a little sharper, a little less ridiculous. It's very bright. Sorry if I'm squinting. You know, I was at the 1.8 on the K35 because it says in the box on the specs that it works best with lower apertures, whereas this one says it works better at a higher aperture, which I'm guessing is saying, hey, we smushed the heck out of it. Maybe stop down your lens a little bit. So we will try that here as well. This is still at a f1.8 though. Oh, it's at 32 millimeters. Shoot. There we go. There's 35. Ah, did we adjust that wrong on the last one? Maybe, maybe not. We're just gonna have to find out. Let's see what it's detuned down to like 1. Okay, here's the lowest marking that isn't off, or the orange marking, which I'm guessing is still gonna have some sort of effect. Because there is a piece of glass in between the mount now, between the lens and the sensor. Let's go all the way with it. There's all the way turned down. Ah, much better. The bokeh still looks affected, but my face is now not as smushy. Yeah, I'm gonna keep using the word smushy. Let's stop down the lens like 2.8 just for the sake of knowing. So 2.8, open this up a little. Just kind of looks nice. Because 2.8 looks nice and people forget about that. What's happening, I guess, when you are pulling the intensity wheel, gear, whatever you want to say, you are pulling the lens, I believe, farther away from the sensor, which is, I guess, detuning it even more. I could have that flipped. I'll put on the screen here if I have that flipped. But basically, you're zooming in and out, which is changing the effect of the piece of glass that is between the sensor and the lens. So I've been shooting at roughly 35 millimeters for all these. We are going to throw on the Canon FDN 35 millimeter, which I've been shooting. I think I shot my last 2 or 3 projects on now. I had put them basically in a drawer, and I have not used my Canon FDs in forever. And I changed my mind. I decided to use them again, and I'm really happy with using those again. But is this going to replace the Canon FDs is the big question. Let's throw the 35 on now and see how it looks comparatively. I believe I'm in focus here. I don't have a wireless setup on right now because I was lazy, but this should be pretty close. It's 35 Canon FDN at f2. Should give us an idea of what just a vintage lens looks like. I kind of felt like when I was shooting with the K35, the L2 tuner, that the bokeh, the bubble bokeh was really cool, but it was sharp in a way that reminded me of like the Zeiss ZF Classics versus the Canon FD. But obviously this will tell us. See, the FD has this nice soft fall off. It's very different from a modern lens. The FD 35mm doesn't have the most character out of all of them, but this is the one I decided to use because it's the focal length that I tend to use the most. You probably do too, I don't know. Whereas like if you're shooting like on a full frame camera, the 55 f1.2, which I also have, looks a lot, just a little bit more moody than the 35, but the 35 is definitely a vibe compared to like the Sigma 18-35 that we're comparing it to naturally. Really, if I'm not fully in focus, that's okay. Look at the bokeh. Let's look at the bokeh here. Look at the halation on the highlights that are just going crazy over my shoulder here. What is happening on the lens and how does it compare to the tuner? The K35 35mm is actually an T1.4, 3. It's like a super speed. They do not make an equivalent to that in the FD lineup. There's some people that have done some like kind of, you know, there's like a Minolta that looks close and kind of matches and stuff, but this is a 2. Luckily though, the Sigma we're comparing it to is at a 1.8, close enough to a 2 to do the comparison. All right, let's move on. So this video is not 7 hours long. I'm gonna throw on, I actually have a set of Sirui Jupiter lenses in right now, some cinema lenses. It's like in the middle of the road, right? They're like, you know, affordable cinema lenses. I'm gonna throw the 35 on this and see how it looks with the tuner versus using the 18-35 Sigma. See how they compare, because their contrast and sharpness is gonna be different as is. It's kind of fun to see how it works on a cinema lens anyways, so. Cranking the shutter angle here because I don't have an ND for this big OD at the moment. This is a T2 lens. Probably roughly in focus here. Let's check out the bokeh, check out the halation. 3, 2, 1, switching to the, this is with the Sirui 35mm T2. I'm at a 10 again on the L1 and it's, yeah, it's intense. The halation is crazy. There's a bee flying around me. I don't like bees. Let's turn it back down to a 6. Yeah? Here's a 6 to compare it to the Sigma 18-35. It's vibey. Very vibey. And how about like a 2? Here's a 2. Much less intense. It's just really cool that you can adjust them. Like, it'd be one thing, it's like you throw a filter on the front and you're like, this is what you get, you know, but this is like, I'm adjusting it. It's like we're using an Airy Prime DNA Prime, whatever they're called, the detunable vintage style cinema lenses from Arri. This is a pretty fun feature. $1,300 for the adapter. If you were curious, but it does advertise being, professional glass in the center. Sometimes you do stuff like this and it's like, oh, let's just make it look bad and use crappy glass, whereas this is actually using glass that has a type of spec that's supposed to make it still look good. And I've noticed I did not add chromatic aberration at all on the K35 one, the L2, when shooting with the Sigma 18-35, which is nice because my FDs actually have chromatic aberration when shooting into high contrast areas like this. And so that won't be embellished for any reason. You don't have to deal with that side of shooting on a vintage lens. We are now on the L2, which is the K35 adapter. Still at a shutter of one degree. This is at a 10. So I found that cranking the L2 looks the most vibey. If you do shoot like wide open or whatever and you're at the 10, your image will not be sharp. It will not be tack sharp as if you are shooting on a kind of vintage lens. So you can dial that back though. So let's try this at a 6 as well. And now we're at a 6. Should change the character. Slowly tuning it. Let's see a 2. And here is a 2. Not the bottom, but close to the bottom on intensity for the detuning. Okay, let's take a second to thank this video's sponsor, but when we come back, I'm going to show you some more footage from this mount and talk a little bit about the benefits of this mount overall. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. You can start with one of their best-in-class templates, or using Squarespace's next-generation web design system, Fluid Engine, you can customize every detail with the reimagined drag-and-drop technology for desktop or mobile. Or maybe you want to start an online store to sell your photography or other products. Squarespace has all the built-in functionality to get one of those up and running quickly, and I've actually been using Squarespace to run my online stores for almost a decade now. And of course, if you're like me, you're probably looking to build a portfolio, which Squarespace has a ton of features for that very thing. You can even create private galleries for client work using these tools. So if you're looking for a home for your work, well, you can just do that with Squarespace. Click the link in the description to get 10% off, and I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So a couple things to remember is that this is a mirrorless adapter, basically, right? You can see that the glass is in there, and when you rotate the ring, it essentially zooms the glass in and out to change your intensity. And this is an RF to EF converter. You keep your electronic situation here. It's built really nice. It's kind of like this soft touch kind of powder coating. I don't know if it's powder coating, but it's a matte finish, so no reflections. It's really nice. So it'll work on a Sony mirrorless E mount or a Canon RF mount at the moment. Hopefully they add some L mount or some Nikon mount to the list because those are also popular mounts. And please remember, I get these comments all the time. Why can't they do these in EF? Why can't they work on an EF camera? Or why can't these lenses be on EF cameras? And something to remember going forward is that these mirrorless mounts are here to stay. This is the modern way. It has a shorter flange distance. It makes it easier for manufacturers to make more lenses and adapters. EF is going to die. It's going to be a dead mount soon. That being said, a lot of us still have EF mount lenses and they're easy to come by, and that's why this is an adapter. The reason this even works in the first place is because we have shortened the flange distance on our new mounts, and that's how we're able to adapt to EF, because EF was designed to have a mirror in between. Thus, this mount is able to have a lens element in the middle in order to make this work. So don't ask about it being used on an EF mount camera or anything like that, because it's just not possible. That's not how the science works out. But also, that being said, PL mount would be really cool if they could do that. I'm guessing they're not going to, like any other mount that has a lens element in it. Most PL lenses protrude too far out the back. They're going to hit the glass, so I wouldn't expect to see this on a PL mount anytime soon. Even Arri has switched to LPL mounts. Their professional mount is now designed for cameras that have less flange distance, so get used to it. Something else worth mentioning is that there is a little lens support on the bottom of this, which is really nice. I've been reviewing quite a few of these adapters recently, and they don't all have the same type of lens support. Some have 3/8, some have 1/4-20. This one does have a 1/4-20 built in. It's really thin. It looks kind of awesome. I'm really excited to have a lens support on this because my RF mount for some reason on my Komodo is a little loose, so this would take care of that issue. Another big benefit to this, like I said, sort of mentioned before, is there's no chromatic aberration that is introduced with this. Although this mount is supposed to make your stuff look more vintage, it does not introduce that chromatic aberration, and to me that is a big plus and something to think about over getting vintage lenses. We've talked about it before, but we don't want to be on set, we don't want to have a big monitor in front of the client, or in a situation like that, and giant pink or green fringing come across the highlights, because your client will probably question what's going on. Even though we know we can remove that in post or something like that, your client won't know the difference. And so this will mitigate that, because you're using a nicer lens that doesn't already have chromatic aberration, ideally, and then you're putting this adapter on it to still get that character. Another cool thing about this mount is that it works with wide angle lenses. So a lot of vintage lenses don't come in fast wide angles. That's why that Canon 24mm FD that I normally use is kind of sought after, because it actually goes to 1.4. But a lot of the other vintage lenses don't go that fast if you need to use that in a low light situation or something like that. Even like right now, I'm shooting at 23mm on the Sigma 18-35, and I'm actually using the L2 adapter right now just for fun to see how it looks. And it's just pretty awesome that I can zoom really wide. I can even go to 18mm on this if I want, and still get that kind of vintage-y look, a low con a little bit, a little less sharp. And maybe you already have vintage lenses and you just want to add this to your kit just so you can get a wider angle lens with better optics. Something to consider as well. They do make vintage wide angles, but this is just, it seems like an easier way of doing it, which leads to my next point, which is pretty cool about this. Some people have already been asking in the comments when I posted about this, is it worth the money, $1,300? I'm going to immediately say yes, and here's why. This is kind of like giving you an entirely new lens set for the price of one lens. So that Sirui lens I shot on earlier, for instance, it's a $1,200 lens. If you want to buy 5 of those, now you're talking about $6,000 or $7,000 to have 5 lenses. Well, say you already have 2 or 3 Sigma lenses, or the 18-35, or something of the like, an EF mount. With this, you can mount this on any of those lenses, essentially giving you now a full set of vintage style lenses, and you don't have to spend any extra money. You only have to buy one thing, one adapter, leave it on your camera, put the lens support on it, and now you're good to go. And because the glass is so nice compared to other adapters that I've used, because this glass, it just looks really nice, I definitely think that $1,300 is worth it. The only complaint would be, it'd be cool if it came with like a little case to put it in or something, but it just comes in its box with like this around it, so you're not really have any other options for that. I guess just leave it on the camera permanently if you want to always shoot in that vintage way. And then autofocus, how cool is that? Now, we don't talk about autofocus that much on this channel because autofocus is unreliable. It's not something you would really use on a commercial film set that often. You use it maybe if you're doing a run and gun thing or documentary. Although autofocus has gotten really good. So if you're on a Sony camera, an E-mount full frame sensor, by the way, these do work on full frame. I have not talked about that because I'm using it on a super 35mm sensor, so I can't really talk to the full frame quality of it, but I'm sure it's great because that's what it was designed for. But if you want to use that some good autofocus from a Sony or something like that, it does pass through and it does work effectively. I haven't seen any difference but using my 18-35 with the adapter or without. The only thing is, like on this adapter, if you crank it up to 10, It's so soft, that's why it was out of focus in the test footage, is because it couldn't find focus because it was so soft. So maybe if you're using the L2 adapter, then the autofocus should work fine. And that's a really big bonus to me. Getting the vintage look with autofocus is pretty fun. I wonder how soft I am right now on this screen because I'm using the deeper aperture one, the L1, and I bet I'm pretty soft. But I just wanted to see what it was going to look like back here just for fun. There are 3 versions of this. I only tested the L1 and the L2, but I believe there's an L3 that's supposed to give you even more aberration on the sides. It's supposed to get way wackier is the word I would use compared to the 2 that I used. My favorite so far is the L2 because it's doing the least to the lens, but still giving it plenty of character. But it's not completely like just breaking the image, kind of like this L1 tends to do. I do have some of the first units. Keep that in mind. Maybe mine is a little bit more soft than the other ones will be, but I'm pretty sure this is what you're going to get. Just know that going into this. Well, let me know what you think of the footage of this mount down below. Try to get one while you can. I think that they have a low inventory on these right now, but I'm sure they'll be back in stock shortly. And as always, guys, I'm Citrus Sakurai. See ya.